We have billed our next guest. It says at 93.7 The Fan on Twitter that our next guest discovered Aaron Donald. What a claim to fame. Put that on a business card, Mulsey.
That's a pretty good one.
Discovered Aaron Donald. He's a Pitt man, was on Dave Wanstead's coaching staff, former defensive line coach at Pitt, now the head coach for the Albany Great Danes. Very good FCS program. Greg Gattaso is back on 93.7 The Fan. Greg, how does it feel to know you discovered Aaron Donald?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on today. I don't know that I actually discovered Aaron Donald. He was a good football player as he was coming up, but I just remember it very well. I was Danny Mason. I was recruiting, who was a great football player at Penn Hills, who went on to play at Pitt. I was at a game, and I'm just watching this young defensive lineman just completely wreck the opposing team. It was as a D-line coach, it was fun to watch. And his AD, who I was friends with at the time, and still am, but at Penn Hills was raving about Aaron up to that point. But when I saw him, I knew we had to have him. Definitely we offered very quickly and started the recruiting process. So I don't know that I discovered him, but I think certainly was one of the few schools that were willing to offer him at that time.
Greg, obviously the production at that point would get your attention. You're seeing him wreck the opposing team, but what specific thing about the way he played the game stood out to you most right away at first blush?
I really think that it's what he is now is just the power and the aggressiveness. He's an extremely explosive person, and he always was, it seems. People ask me these stories about him, and I remember seeing him in the weight room one day, just with his feet up, crossed, warming up with 315 pounds on a bench, just talking as I was walking by to go to the coach's office. I mean, he just was a very, very strong person, physical and tough at that young age, and I fell in love with him that night watching him play.
Greg, what do you think it was about Aaron Donald that made some of the other big schools, your alma mater, Penn State, for example, not far away? What was it about Donald maybe then that had other schools, other recruiters, unlike you, leery about him? Now he's gone on to be one of the greatest defensive players of all time, no exaggeration. But why wasn't he, you've seen him blow up opposing defenses in high school, why wasn't he coveted a five-star guy who everybody wanted? Why wasn't Nick Saban flying in on a private jet to see this guy, Greg?
Honestly, I think in recruiting, I think a lot of coaches just go by the book. You got to be 6'3", you got to be 6'4", you got to be this, that. He just kind of doesn't fit the mold. And at the time, Pitt fans will remember, I always tell everyone that Mick Williams was Aaron Donald before Aaron Donald was.
Wow.
And we had a defensive lineman named Mick Williams who was 5 foot at the time. Mick was 5'11", 265 pounds, and he was just a very, very similar type player to Aaron Donald. And he was the Big East Defensive Player of the Year his senior year. We had a great group of kids at that time on the D line at Pitt, but Mick kind of was a trailblazer in that you don't have to be a cookie cutter guy to be a great defensive lineman, and so Aaron was natural following of Mick Williams in my mind. So as I'm watching him play, I mean, at the time I saw him his junior year, he's probably 5'11", just a lot like Mick Williams at the time, and I saw the same traits, the same explosiveness, and Coach Wanstead loved guys like that were just disruptive and chaotic in the backfield. It's the way we played and the way we wanted to continue to play. So he was, he came into Pitt we had a really good defensive line for a couple of years. My last couple of years that we were there, and he just kind of fit right in. So I still have the training tape that we watch with our kids here at Albany and you see Aaron as a freshman drilling next to some great football players like Greg Romeus and Jabal Sheard and Miles Carrigan and Chaz Alexi and Mick Williams, all these guys, Rashad Duncan, were Gus Mistakis, all this group at that time. And he was really good as a freshman too. I mean, he didn't have to redshirt. He was able to go out there and compete and play.
Greg, I know, unless you have ultimate, like, predictive powers, I can't imagine anybody thought Aaron Donald would turn quite into what he's turned into. But I know you had moved on, you were elsewhere by then, when he was starting to really get on the map at Pitt. But when did you take notice, even from afar, and go, wow, that guy that I saw when I was looking at Dan Mason, that guy is just an absolute monster in the making, and he's going to be a stud at the next level?
Yeah, I'm not surprised he's a great player. Obviously, we had no idea at the moment you're recruiting him that he was going to turn into this beast at the NFL level. To be in the conversation with Joe Greene is amazing to me. Lawrence Taylor, all these great football players. And, so you don't know that at the time, but he had those intangibles. I think the thing that gets lost in when you see these great football players like Aaron is the intelligence that they have as athletes and how they compete. And he's A+ in every category. He's just not the biggest guy in the world. He's just not the prototype size, but he's A+ in every other category. And he's comes from a great family, great people that he's got great support, and he was able to go out and turn into this great football player. But to answer your question exactly, I remember seeing him his senior year, and I thought they were doing a really good thing at the time. They were moving him around the defensive line. The couple of the games I was able to see, and he can play multiple positions because he's so talented, and it was really tough to try to block him. I mean, his accolades are amazing, and what he's earned through being a great football player. But at the end of the day, you can't be that great if you're not a really, really intelligent person, and I think that's understated with Aaron. He's a great football player. He's got a great football mind. He knows how to study his opponents, and and you go back and look at the last two plays of that game.
Yep.
As a D-line coach, I was amazed by what he did. The third down run was one of the greatest football plays I've seen by somebody.
Wow. Greg Gattaso with us, who recruited Aaron Donald to Pitt. Expand on that a little bit, Greg. Why did that specific play, why did that stand out in such a magnificent way to you, as you just put it?
Well, there was two big things. One, he overwhelmed a giant person and was able to squeeze off the hole with his inside hand pressing through the offensive lineman, and then he was able to wrap up the running back and keep him from getting the yard. If you watch that play over again, he literally he anchors himself and just holds him there, and he forces the fourth down play. So many times you see those plays, and they get the yard, people push and all that stuff. But Aaron it was an amazing play. I was really, really shocked by how the great play he made, and I would not have wanted to be that poor guy who was trying to block him on fourth down. I mean, it wasn't even close. Not sure he put a hand on him. Is he
blockable? Like, I was laughing during the game last night, Greg, and they're saying, well, they're rolling, three guys over. It was more that they were ripping the Bengals offensive line. Now they can't handle this guy. I don't even think there's a lineman in the league that can handle him one-on-one. I'm not even sure he's truly blockable in any sense. Like, what could a team even do to try to slow him down?
Well, I think you see what they do. They double team and triple team him. There was multiple times in the game where you saw three guys around him at the end of a play. He not only draws a lot of attention. I mean, it was a quiet night a lot of the game for him, and it's going to be when they're putting 600 and 700 pounds, 900 pounds of people on you, and but he opens up for the rest of the defensive line. I mean, those guys get all one-on-one blocks almost exclusively during a game. But I really, from what I've seen in the times I've gotten to watch him play, I very rarely see one guy block him. It's very rare.
Greg, there was a report before the game that he might retire last night, and we haven't taken that too seriously today, but just talking to you, someone that knows him as well, or knew him at such a young age like you did, I'm just thinking out loud here, like, with Tom Brady, that he can't just half-ass it, roll out of bed, and play football. He cares way more about it than to just go about his business that way. So it's more than just a full-time job. It's a 24/7 thing. And it sounds to me like you might believe that Aaron Donald makes a similar investment into football. That it's not just you show up for mini camp, training camp, and like he is obsessed with football 365 days a year to get himself to where he is right now. So maybe he doesn't want to do that anymore. I don't know. I'm just thinking about your description of him, and it made me consider that a little bit.
Well, I mean, obviously, I have no idea. He may not really know, but I do know the physical toll of playing the position for as long as he has at the level he's played, and the way he trains. It's got to be tough on his body, and he's accomplished so much. I mean, part of me prays he retires and enjoys the rest of his life, because he's a great person and he does a lot of good things for people, but at some point it becomes a physical burden, and he's not really that big of a human being, that to take that beating. So I don't know what he'll do, but it's been a joy watching him play, I can tell you that.
Greg, you watched the Steelers in the 70s. You grew up here. You watched Joe Greene. You watched Lawrence Taylor into the 80s, Reggie White. Does he deserve to be included with those guys, in your opinion?
I think certainly in the conversation for sure. I just think it's a different game. I think comparing people from eras is silly,
okay,
to be honest. To say he's better than Joe Greene, I think when you go back and watch some Joe Greene clips, there's a lot of similarities in the dominance that they have. Certainly LT changed the game in pass rushing, and Reggie White obviously was another beast. I just think it's hard. I think that it's a different type of game now. The run game's not what it was, and it's not as prevalent, and there's more pass opportunities, but certainly he deserves to be in that conversation without a doubt.
Is there anybody in the modern game that even comes close to him? Like I said earlier in the show, Greg, Pony put it to me and asked me where I thought he ranked and how his contemporaries ranked next to him. I said Aaron Donald, significant gap, and then any other defensive player you want. I think he stands on a pedestal by himself. What say you among these modern players, his contemporaries?
Well, the only thing I would tell you is I don't watch a lot of pro football, and outside of the Steelers and the Rams, I have a few of my guys still playing. I try to watch when I can, Jabal and Quentin Jefferson and a couple guys. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think it's real hard to compare anyone else to him, because I think the combination of rushing the passer, the attention that he draws, and he's able to play the run, he's a very complete football player, and he plays a ton of snaps. I mean, that's one of the things I'd be curious about, is how many snaps he plays a game on average compared to other D linemen. Doesn't seem like he gets rotated out very much from what I've seen. But I think he's certainly in the top one or two or three, especially in the interior. I'm not sure there's anybody better than him. I'd like to see him if there are.
You'd like to recruit one to Albany, right?
Oh,
I mean,
boy,
Greg.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm you, I would think at the FCS level, you got to get all the best defensive linemen being able to say, hey, you see Aaron Donald? I recruited that guy.
Yeah,
can't hurt.
You'd hope. It's funny, one of the things I've always been able to do is find some of the vertically challenged guys that are really good football players. I mean, I coached a kid at Maryland named Andre Monroe who was 5'10", another one of those kind of guys that was a great football player. So I certainly am not it doesn't scare me away from a young man if he doesn't fit the mold.
Greg Gattaso, former Pitt defensive lineman, saw Aaron Donald at Penn Hills and said, we got to get this guy to Pitt, and the rest is history. Greg, enjoy upstate New York. We miss you here in Pittsburgh, all right? Thank you.
Appreciate it. Love Pittsburgh, as always.
Greg Gattaso, yep.